The Promise of Stoic Mental Toughness, Rewritten, Part 1. Imagine for a moment that there's a way to build a mind so steady, so unshakable, that no storm of life could knock it down. Not a fantasy, not a trick, but a discipline proven by centuries of human experience, practiced by Roman emperors who ruled vast empires, by philosophers who lived in poverty yet felt rich in spirit, and by ordinary people who found in it a way to navigate life's chaos with composure. This is not about forcing yourself to be strong in the conventional sense. It's not about puffing up your chest, gritting your teeth, and pretending nothing affects you. That kind of strength often crumbles the moment life lands a real blow. No, the mental fortitude I'm talking about is deeper. It's the ability to remain calm in crisis, to see opportunity in adversity, and to maintain clarity of thought when emotions threaten to pull you under. This is the essence of Stoic mental toughness. And the most surprising part? You don't need wealth, fame, or special circumstances to develop it. You only need the willingness to train your mind, day after day, the way a warrior trains for battle, except your battlefield is life itself. The common misunderstanding about strength. In our modern culture, strength is often mistaken for mere willpower, the ability to push through pain or resist temptation. While willpower has its place, Stoicism teaches that true mental toughness is not just about enduring. It's about understanding. Understanding your own mind. Understanding what is, and is not, within your control. Understanding that your worth does not depend on what others think of you, but on the integrity of your actions. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice the subtle shift. Strength is not about bending the world to your will, but about mastering yourself in the face of the world's unpredictability. When criticism becomes an opportunity. Let's take an example, criticism. Most people react to criticism with defensiveness or hurt. Some lash out. Others shrink away, avoiding situations where they might be judged. But a Stoic views criticism differently. If it's valid, it's a chance to improve. If it's false, it's meaningless. Why let it disturb your peace? The Stoic response is not cold indifference, but calm discernment. You pause, you assess, and you decide how to act, not how to react impulsively. This is one of the first muscles Stoicism trains in you, the gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies freedom, and in that freedom lies strength. What you can and cannot control. Epictetus, born a slave and later one of Rome's most respected philosophers, made this the cornerstone of his teaching. Some things are up to us, and some are not. The more time you spend wrestling with things outside your control, the weather, the economy, other people's opinions, the more energy you waste. That energy could have been used to shape your own actions, thoughts, and character. Think of it like this. Every day, you have a finite number of mental coins. You can spend them on outrage, envy, or anxiety over what you cannot change, or you can invest them in discipline, learning, and deliberate action. Reframing obstacles. One of the most liberating Stoic practices is the art of reframing. When an obstacle appears, the untrained mind sees it as a wall. The Stoic mind asks, how can this wall become a doorway? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is not just poetic. It's practical. If you fail an exam, it's not proof you're stupid. It's an opportunity to study smarter. If you're rejected for a job, it's a chance to improve your skills and find a better fit. If someone betrays you, it's a test of your ability to remain principled. Life will hand you endless challenges, but each one carries within it a lesson or a skill you wouldn't have gained otherwise. That's why Stoics train themselves to lean into obstacles instead of avoiding them. Choosing your attitude. There's one thing no one can take from you. Your ability to choose your attitude. You might lose your possessions, your position, even your health, but your mind is your own. A storm may rage outside, but you decide whether it rages inside you. This is why Stoic mental toughness is so powerful. It shifts your sense of power from the fragile world outside to the steady world inside. When you adopt this mindset, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as an active participant in life's unfolding. the practice of daily mental training. Of course, none of this happens by accident. You can't read a single quote from Marcus Aurelius and wake up enlightened the next morning. Stoic resilience is built through daily practice, small, consistent mental exercises that strengthen your inner discipline. Just as a musician practices scales or an athlete drills movements, a Stoic practices reframing, emotional control, and mindful focus every single day. One such practice is the morning preview. Before your day begins, you imagine the possible difficulties ahead. Not to become pessimistic, but to prepare. Today I might encounter rudeness, delays, disappointment, and yet I can meet each one with patience and clarity. By rehearsing mentally, you create a buffer between yourself and life's surprises. When the moment arrives, you're not caught off guard, you're ready. Why this matters today? You might wonder why ancient Roman philosophy should matter in the 21st century. After all, our world is so different. Technology, global politics, endless streams of information. And yet, the core human challenges haven't changed. We still face uncertainty. We still experience loss. We still wrestle with anger, fear, and desire. In fact, with the pace of modern life and the constant pull of distraction, the ability to stay calm and focused might be more valuable now than ever before. Stoicism offers a framework for exactly that, a way to anchor yourself in values and principles when everything else feels unstable. The first step toward developing Stoic mental toughness is simple, though not always easy. Commit to noticing your reactions. When something irritates you, pause. When something frightens you, pause. When something excites you, pause. That pause is the training ground. In that pause, you can decide, is this within my control? If not, can I let it go? If yes, what's the most virtuous action I can take? Each time you make that choice consciously, you strengthen the mental muscle that will carry you through far greater trials. This is the promise of Stoic mental toughness. Not that life will become easy, but that you will become unbreakable. Not because you're invincible, but because you've learned to live in harmony with the only thing you truly own, your mind. The Emperor's Trial. The following morning, Rome awoke beneath a sky painted in deep shades of crimson and gold. The city buzzed with activity, but for Marcus, the world felt strangely muted. He walked alone through the palace gardens, his thoughts heavy with the weight of the dream he had experienced the previous night. A dream of a burning city, of people crying out for leadership, and of himself standing motionless, unable to act. It had felt too real to dismiss as simple imagination. He found himself stopping at a marble bench overlooking a pond. The water was still, reflecting the morning sky. For a moment, he simply watched the ripples created by a drifting breeze. Then slowly, his reflection began to shift in his mind's eye. He no longer saw a powerful ruler. He saw a man, flesh, bone, and fallible, who bore the crushing responsibility of a vast empire. I am not a god, he whispered to himself. I am a man, and I must learn to rule as one. It was then that Epictetus' words returned to him. It is not the things themselves that disturb men, but their judgments about these things. Marcus understood. If he wished to serve Rome wisely, he had to discipline his own mind first. The test arrives. By midday, a messenger arrived at the palace gates, breathless and pale. He carried news from the northern provinces. A rebellion had broken out. Villages were burning, and panic was spreading. The Senate was already murmuring about sending legions. But Marcus knew this was not just a political crisis. It was a test. He gathered his council. Around the long table sat generals, senators, and advisors, each speaking louder than the last, urging immediate retaliation. Strike now, before the rebels gather strength, shouted one. If we hesitate, we will appear weak, insisted another. Marcus listened, calm and still, as the storm of opinions raged. In his heart, he heard the echo of the Stoic principle. Control what you can, accept what you cannot. He realized that while he could not undo the rebellion instantly, he could control his own response to it. And in that moment, his response would set the tone for the entire empire. Gentlemen, he said at last, his voice cutting through the noise, we will not act from fear or anger. Fear clouds the mind. Anger blinds the eyes. We will gather full intelligence before moving a single soldier. We act not to preserve pride, but to preserve Rome. There was silence. A few senators frowned, but the generals understood. A battle fought with a clear mind had more chance of victory than one fought with a clouded heart. Night of reflection. That evening, Marcus retired to his study. He took up his wax tablet and began to write, not laws, not orders, but private meditations. His hand moved steadily as he wrote. When trials come, remember, the fire tests the gold. If I lose myself to rage, I am already defeated. If I cling to fear, I surrender my freedom. Only when I remain in command of my mind am I truly in command of anything at all. He paused, leaning back in his chair, and thought of the countless rulers in history who had been destroyed not by their enemies, but by their inability to master themselves. I will not be one of them, he resolved. The journey north. Within days, Marcus set out for the northern provinces, not with a massive army to crush the rebels immediately, but with a small, swift force to learn the truth. Riding through the countryside, he saw firsthand the villages scorched by fire, the fields trampled by soldiers, the people living in fear. Yet he also saw something else, that the rebellion was not driven purely by hatred of Rome, but by desperation. Taxes had risen, crops had failed, and local officials had abused their power. In one village, an old farmer approached him. The man's face was lined by years of toil, his eyes weary but honest. He bowed and said, "Caesar, we do not wish for war. We wish only to live." Those simple words struck Marcus more deeply than any grand speech in the Senate ever could. The power of perspective. That night, Marcus stood beneath the stars, the cold northern wind biting at his face. He thought about what Epictetus had once taught. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The Senate saw rebels. The generals saw enemies. But Marcus saw people, citizens of Rome, however misguided their actions might have been, who needed justice, not just punishment. He decided then that the Stoic way was not only the moral path, but also the most practical one. A ruler who understood the minds of his people would be stronger than one who ruled through fear alone. Confrontation without hatred. The next day, Marcus finally met the rebel leaders. They expected threats. They expected to be humiliated or executed on the spot. Instead, Marcus listened. He let them speak their grievances, one by one, and when they had finished, he simply said, "You have acted against Rome. But Rome is not a faceless tyrant. Rome is your home. If you will lay down your arms and return to the fields, I will see to it that your complaints are heard, and that justice is done." This stunned them. One leader asked, "And if we refuse?" Marcus answered, "Then you will face Rome's legions, but not my hatred. I do not hate you. I will simply fulfill my duty as emperor." His calm, measured words carried more weight than any shouted threat. The rebels, seeing that this was no ordinary ruler, agreed to disband and return to their homes. Return to Rome. When Marcus returned to the capital, the Senate was divided. Some praised his restraint. Others accused him of being too soft. But Marcus knew that Stoicism was never about pleasing everyone. It was about doing what was right, regardless of the applause or the criticism. In his private notes, he wrote, "If they call me weak for choosing mercy, let them. Strength is not in the fist that strikes, but in the hand that holds steady when it would be easier to lash out." A lesson for all. From that day on, Marcus Aurelius carried himself with an even deeper sense of purpose. He had proven to himself that the principles he studied were not just words in a book. They were tools for real life. He had faced a rebellion without losing his temper, without letting fear drive his actions, and without forgetting the humanity of those who opposed him. His experience became a lesson for the empire, and for us centuries later, that true strength lies in self-control, and that the most powerful victories are often the ones won within the mind. And so, as he walked once more through the palace gardens, he felt the quiet satisfaction of a man who had passed a test, not set by fate, but by his own values. The final steps to unshakable Stoic discipline. The journey toward mastering oneself is not a straight line. It is a winding path, sometimes steep, sometimes narrow, often lonely, and always demanding. If you have made it this far, you already understand that the Stoic path is not about collecting abstract ideas or quoting ancient philosophers to sound wise. It is about living the wisdom. It is about embodying the principles until they are no longer something you remember to practice, but something you are. In these final steps, we will go deeper. We will address not only the habits that shape your discipline, but the mindset that fortifies it. By now, you have seen that discipline is not a prison, but a form of freedom, the kind of freedom only available to those who can govern themselves. But here is the truth. Many people will never experience this freedom, not because it is unattainable, but because they do not want to pay the price. That price is consistency, self-examination, and the willingness to be uncomfortable for a higher purpose. These final lessons will push you to embrace that price willingly. 1. The power of selective indifference. One of the most underestimated Stoic tools is selective indifference. This does not mean apathy in the sense of laziness or disengagement. It means choosing carefully what will occupy your mental space. Modern life is an endless barrage of stimuli. Headlines screaming disaster, social media demanding your outrage, trivial disputes at work pulling your focus. If you let every piece of noise disturb your emotional state, your discipline will dissolve into reactionary behavior. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Selective indifference is the deliberate act of ignoring what does not serve your purpose. This requires a question you must ask yourself daily. Does this matter to my life's mission? If the answer is no, then your time, attention, and emotional energy should not be invested there. This is not withdrawal from life. It is the mastery of engagement. You choose your battles. You do not throw your energy at every spark of irritation. This discipline protects your mental clarity and preserves your strength for what truly matters. 2. Emotional reserve as strength. The world often equates loudness with strength, shouting opinions, making grand gestures, showing off victories. But the Stoics saw true strength in quiet control. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Emotional reserve is not suppression, it is containment. It is holding your ground without being swept away by the current of immediate emotions. In practice, this means resisting the urge to answer every provocation, avoiding public displays of frustration, and giving your responses the gift of time. A Stoic's words are not the first ones that come to mind. They are the result of measured thought. When you build emotional reserve, you do not lose your humanity. You protect it. You stop letting temporary feelings dictate permanent consequences. And in that self-control, people begin to see a kind of authority that cannot be faked. 3. The art of reframing obstacles. A disciplined mind is not one that avoids problems, but one that transforms them. Epictetus would tell his students, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly." This is not fatalism, it is strategic reframing. Every obstacle contains a lesson or an advantage if you are willing to look for it. When you face resistance, your first thought should be, "How does this serve me?" Perhaps a delay in your plans forces you to refine them. Perhaps a betrayal reveals the truth about someone you trusted too easily. Perhaps failure forces you to rebuild with stronger foundations. By reframing, you strip the obstacle of its power to demoralize you. You turn it into a tool, sometimes even an ally. This mental discipline is one of the hardest to develop because our instinct is to see inconvenience as an enemy. But the Stoic sees every event as a chance to grow. 4. Living above comfort. Discipline cannot grow in the soil of constant comfort. Comfort, for all its sweetness, dulls the edge of the mind. If every day you give your body and mind exactly what they want, you rob yourself of the resilience needed to endure life's harder seasons. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, sleeping on the floor, fasting, walking barefoot, wearing rough clothing, not as punishment, but as training. This is not about ascetic extremes. It is about occasional self-denial to strengthen the will. You might take a cold shower when you do not have to. You might go without your favorite indulgence for a week. You might walk instead of drive. Every act of chosen discomfort teaches your mind, I am not ruled by my cravings. I am stronger than my conveniences. 5. The discipline of daily review. Self-mastery without self-examination is impossible. The Stoics often wrote in journals at the end of the day, not to document events, but to assess their own performance. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations was essentially a private diary of philosophical self-correction. He wrote to himself about where he had failed, where he had succeeded, and how he could improve. The daily review is your accountability mirror. You ask, did I live according to my principles today? Did I allow anger, fear, or vanity to control me? What will I do differently tomorrow? This habit turns every day into a lesson, every mistake into a teacher. Over time, you begin to notice patterns in your weaknesses, and you develop strategies to counter them. This is not about perfection. It is about progress under the guidance of honest reflection. 6. The freedom of letting go. Discipline often conjures images of control over actions, thoughts, and emotions. But there is another side to it, knowing when to release control. We exhaust ourselves trying to manage outcomes that are not ours to command. The Stoics taught that freedom comes from focusing only on what is within your power and releasing the rest. This is not passivity. It is precision. You act with full commitment in the areas you influence, and you release attachment to results that depend on chance, timing, or other people's choices. Letting go does not weaken discipline, it refines it. You stop wasting effort on the impossible and concentrate on the essential. 7. Discipline as service. Finally, Stoic discipline is not for the sake of discipline itself. It is not about becoming a cold, rigid perfectionist. It is about becoming someone who can serve yourself, your family, your community, from a place of stability and integrity. A disciplined person can be trusted in a crisis. They can make decisions without panic. They can endure hardship without collapsing into self-pity. Your discipline becomes an anchor for others, and in serving them, you deepen your own sense of purpose. For the Stoic, the self is not the final destination. The self is the vessel through which virtue moves into the world. Final words. The Stoic path will never be fashionable in a world obsessed with instant gratification, constant validation, and emotional indulgence. But that is exactly why it is worth walking. In the quiet hours before dawn, when you choose to rise and begin your day with intention. In the moments of temptation, when you choose principle over pleasure. In the storms of life, when you stand unshaken while others lose themselves. That is where Stoic discipline proves its worth. You will not be perfect. You will stumble. But every time you return to the path, you reaffirm who you are. And with each choice, you shape a life that no fortune, no insult, no tragedy can destroy. Remember this. The world does not need more people who can speak about wisdom. It needs more people who can live it. Be one of them.